Full and uncut versions available on Patreon. Check in the description below.
Greetings once again, Pokemaniacs. Duuz-Diz-Din back again with more of the Pokemon Adventures manga. Last time, we had the face-off of Red, Blue, and Green against the forces of Team Rocket as they made their way into Saffron City in order to save Professor Oak and the citizens of Pallet Town. As they went in, they faced off against the Rocket Triad, or whatever they called themselves, the gym leaders who allied with Giovanni of Team Rocket, namely Sabrina, Koga, and Lieutenant Surge. Each of our heroes faced off with one of them, but in the end, the last one standing was Sabrina, who, using a specialized device that used the various different gym badges that had the power to enhance Pokemon, they combined the 3 legendary bird Pokemon that Team Rocket obtained, Articuno, Moltres, and Zapdos, into one Chimera-like bird monstrosity. It took the combined efforts of Red, Blue, and Green's fully evolved Charizard, Blastoise, and Venusaur in order to take Sabrina's monstrosity down. In the end, the self-building collapse, seemingly leading to the end of Giovanni, Sabrina, Lieutenant Surge, and Koga. But I doubt they're really gone for good. But the day was saved, especially as the gym leaders allied with Good, Erica, Brock, and Misty, came in and mopped up all their remaining grunts. And with that, the day was saved. All 3 of our heroes parted ways, with Red ending up back in Cerulean City, namely the caves on the outskirts, hunting down a mysterious Pokemon that was causing trouble that he was informed of by Bill, only for him to encounter Blaine once again. And the mysterious Pokemon was none other than the creation Blaine made for Team Rocket, namely Mewtwo. Blaine explained the weird connection he and Mewtwo had, as Mewtwo had some of Blaine's cells in its body, which meant that Blaine was able to become a living Mewtwo detector. Unfortunately, this connection was also killing Blaine, so Blaine is determined that he will put a stop to Mewtwo before he should die, diving into the fray, much to the horror of Red. How will things go next? Join me as I find out, won't you? Alright, as the psychic wind continues to whip around, Blaine, diving in with his Rapidash, says there's only one way to break through this twister, and that's to blast energy equal to the energy creating the storm straight into the very heart of it with, and as Red calls out to Blaine, Blaine shouts, "My own body, one final blow." In chapter 35, and Mewtwo 3, as Blaine dives in with his Rapidash towards Mewtwo, Red can only brace himself for the oncoming blow. As a massive explosion is sent off, Red comments, "The twister, it's gone." And the fireball wall, as Red is released from his protective fireball wall, he sees Blaine fall to the ground. He rushes over saying, "Hang in there, Blaine." And as Blaine stirs, he asks, "What about the tornado and Mewtwo?" Red comments, "Blown away, gone." Blaine smiles and gives a sigh saying, "Then it's done." Red shouts, "You could have gotten yourself killed." Blaine simply says, "Heh, yeah, I guess." He then pulls out a Pokeball saying, "Red, do you know what this is?" Red says, "It's a Master Ball. You should have used it. With this thing, you didn't have to risk your life like that." Blaine smiles saying, "That's what I thought once. But you saw the power of that tornado. Mewtwo's power has grown so great that it's nearly impossible to get close to it now." Red gazes at the Master Ball saying, "Yeah, but still." Blaine tells him, "Red, you haven't changed a bit. Your eyes have the same compassion in them when I first met you at Team Rocket's headquarters." Red is taken aback, saying, How do you know I was there?" Blaine says, "Because I was there, kid." In the research facility constructed in the basement of the Celadon City Game Center. I'd already thrown away my position as a gym leader to join Team Rocket, having fallen prey to my scientific curiosity. I had no qualms about using Pokemon, Eevee, Gyarados, as laboratory subjects, but you were different. When you learned that a Mew was to be used in the creation of a man-made Pokemon. You protected that Mew from Jinx. You made an ally out of Gyarados, who had lost trust in humans after being used in experiment. Seeing you treat Pokemon as precious creatures, the love and respect you had for them made me ashamed of what I'd become. I had set out to create a ferocious beast, and I succeeded. It's like the line from the movie. We set out to make the world's most powerful Pokemon, and we succeeded. Oh, that's good. But the beast was me. You're the reason I turned against Team Rocket. You're the source of my strength and courage. Inspired by a babe. You remind me of the babe. What babe? The babe with the power. What power? The power of voodoo. I'm sorry. Just immediately came to mind. You're the reason there will be no more victims of Mewtwo. Blaine falls unconscious, and Red tries to stir him, saying, Blaine, don't leave me now. But suddenly, a rock is thrown at Red's head, knocking his hat off, or something is thrown at Red's head. As Red gazes back, he says no, as he spots a still alive and very pissed Mewtwo. Red lurches back, saying, He's still alive. He thinks to himself, Blaine, he's hurt bad. I don't dare move him. As Mewtwo moves in, slowly and slumps forward, Red says, I have to find Mewtwo's weak spot, but how? Red goes for his Pokeball and brings out Poliwrath, commanding it to attack. Mewtwo then conjures a psychic spoon. Man, he could eat so much cereal with that. And he uses the spoon to whack Poliwrath away. Red shouts, a spoon? What kind of attack is that? Blaine stirs, saying, careful, that's Mewtwo's battle pattern. It adapts its power to any situation. For multiple enemies, it channels its energy into a tornado. For a single enemy, it forms that spoon-shaped weapon. Silly looking, perhaps, but actually, the psychic's ultimate weapon is Mewtwo's just out there twirling the spoon like a badass. Mewtwo lunges in with his psychic spoon. As Blaine says, Mewtwo was genetically engineered for combat. Nothing in nature can equal it. See, that's what the movie was missing. Mewtwo with a giant psychic glowing spoon. Red dives out of the spoon attack so he doesn't end up like so much breakfast cereal. But Mewtwo's not done. He strikes and strikes. He's all about them 2 scoops. Blaine says, don't you see, Red? You can't weaken it. You can't catch it in a Pokeball. There's nothing to be done but destroy it. Red, meanwhile, readies himself, and I don't know what he's doing with his Pokeballs there. As he says, okay then. Oh, he just cycles through all of them and brings out all of his remaining Pokemon, saying, I'm counting on you guys. Blaine shouts, This is crazy, kid. You're only going to make things worse. What do you expect him to do? You said destroy him, so he brought out everyone. A group attack will just make it shift back to the tornado. And Mewtwo does just that. He dissipates the psychic spoon and then starts conjuring his psychic tornado. It doesn't have the same ring as psychic spoon. I mean, psychic spoon. Blaine says, now you've done it. The wind's rising as all of Red's Pokemon are lifted into the vortex. Blaine says they're all being blown away. But he then spots Red up in the sky using Aerodactyl. And he also has Pikachu on his head. As Red says, before this Twister gets up to full power, I gotta get to the center. Blaine said, Red, that's impossible. I just tried that, didn't you see? Stop, Red! But Red dives in, only to be blown back by Mewtwo. Red then calls out for Pikachu, launching him into an attack. And in Pikachu's mouth is none other than the Master Ball, much to Mewtwo's shock, as he can do nothing but be captured. As Blaine shouts, my lord! And all that's left is Pikachu and the shaking Master Ball, with Mewtwo now captured and very pissed. Yeah, back in the day I made the mistake of using the Master Ball in order to catch one of the legendary birds. But the moment I'm just like, oh wait, there's Mewtwo? Well shoot, I'm gonna buy me a whole bunch of Ultra Balls and just start chucking them at the legendary birds. Yo, and I went through a lot of Pokeballs just to make sure I could catch all the legendary birds without using the Master Ball, so I could use the Master Ball on Mewtwo. As Red says, yeah! Blaine is bewildered, saying, as it was forming the tornado, You hit it with the ball? As the Master Ball rolls on the ground, Red hits the ground hard with Aerodactyl. He cries out, "Youch!" Blaine crawls over to him saying, "Red, what was that?" Red smiles saying, "There was no way I could have done that while it was holding the spoon. I had to launch a group attack to get it to switch to the twister." Red holds up Pikachu, who holds up the Master Ball, and Red says, "Oh hey, here you go, Blaine." Much to Blaine's shock, Red explains, "Mewtwo is a pretty scary creature, all right, but it's been held prisoner in a lab its whole life. All it knows about humans is that we're cruel and arrogant. But what if it learns something different? What if it sees that not all humans treat other creatures badly? What if he learned that it is not one's birth that matters, but the soul?" Sorry, I'm thinking of the movie. Red says, "Find out, Blaine. Teach it." Red then runs over to his Pokemon saying, "Hey guys, great job." Blaine holds his arm that is now no longer looking like something out of Akira. As he says, "The pain in my arm is subsiding." He then gazes up at Mewtwo and the Master Ball saying, "Mewtwo, does that mean your pain is subsiding? Would you really be willing to start over?" "Oh, I just remembered something I haven't thought of in a long while. Something that used to sum up everything I aspired to. The words Pokemon trainer. Someone who spends his life with trust and is trusted by his Pokemon. Someone like you, Red." And yeah, he's a Pokemon trainer. Or does that word have a special meaning? Red then has Blaine lean on him, hefting him up on one shoulder. As Red says, "You say something, Blaine?" Blaine looks away, smiling, saying, "Oh no, I was just thinking it might be fun to have a trainer battle sometime." Red says, "Sure thing. I'll take you on any time when you're all better." Okay, guys, we're off to Indigo Plateau as Red takes Blaine off with his Pokemon. Meanwhile, something's flying up in the sky. We then cut to Viridian Forest, where a young girl who, spoiler alert, I know is named Yellow, wanders and says, "Oh no, I'm lost." Suddenly, there's a rustling in the brush behind her. She gulps and screams as a Dratini leaps out, attacking her. But suddenly something comes racing out. It's Venusaur using its vine to bind down the Dratini as Red gets Yellow out of the way. In Chapter 36, Drat That Dratini, Red turns to Yellow saying, "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" He then says, "Okay, Venusaur, Vine Whip." And Venusaur does just that, knocking the Dratini down. Red goes, "Phew, you should be more careful out here. Sure you're okay?" Yellow says, "Yeah, thanks." "Is that yours?" As she turns to Venusaur, Red says, "Uh-huh. Don't let it scare you. Venusaur is as gentle as they come." Yellow says, "Wow, you're so lucky. I wish I had a friend like that." Red mentions, "You don't have any Pokemon of your own?" Yellow says, "No." Red hands over a Pokeball saying, "Okay then, take this Pokeball and throw it at that Rattata, the way I just did." Yellow says, "Like this?" and tosses out the Pokeball, which reveals Pikachu. Red says, "I'd like you to meet Pikachu, an electric-type Pokemon. This one's nicknamed Pika." He never calls them by their nickname, though. Red then shows Yellow the Pokédex, saying, "Come on, try giving Pika a command. This attack first, for instance." Yellow looks at it, saying, "Thundershock?" Red says, "Yeah, and hurry, Pika's waiting." As Pikachu glances back at Yellow and Red, Yellow says, "Okay, Pikachu, Thundershock." And Pikachu does just that on the Rattata. Red thinks, wow, you can tell Pika's happy to be back in its home forest. The Rattata is staggered. Let's be honest, it should be knocked out cold. But for the sake of the plot, it's different. Red says, "Okay, we defeated the last one, but this one will just weaken. And then, now, throw the Pokeball at it." Yellow does just that. Manages to capture the Rattata, saying, "It's in the ball." Red says, "You captured it. That means you're responsible for it, and it'll do whatever you say." Yellow brings out the Rattata and holds it up, saying, "Ooh, nice to meet you, Rattata." Red says, "Doesn't matter how big a Pokemon is, the Pokeball will shrink it down, and it'll fit right in your pocket. Some kind of pocket monster. That sounds marketable." Oh, suddenly, there's dozens of eyes leering at the two from the forest. Yellow questions, "What's going on?" as she moves in close to Red. Red says, "It's okay, don't be afraid." But he thinks to himself, something strange is going on though. All Pokemon are usually so savage. As several, I don't remember what these Pokemon's name are. Golem, there we go, Golem. Should have been easy, but several Golem move in on the two of them. Red tells Yellow to run. but as they try to take off, they're blocked by a wheezing, with Red saying, "Here too? Shoot." He throws out his Pokeball. Oh, wait, did he just use the quick escape? Oh, okay. I get it. He throws down a Pokeball, there's a lot of dust, and when the Golem and Wheezing look, there's nowhere to be seen. Cut to the sky, where Red is carrying Yellow off with Aerodactyl. He says, "Whew," and chuckles to himself. When things are coming at you from all directions, the only way to go is up. Where do you live, kid? Yellow says, "Viridian City." Red says, "Okay then, Viridian City it is. We're on the road to Viridian City. Me and my friends along the way." I'm sorry. I'm reliving a lot of childhood memories with this. Red thinks to himself, another thing that's weird, that Dratini shouldn't even be in the forest. Actually, yeah, that's a good point. The heck was a Dratini doing in the forest? And why did they all attack at once? What's happening? Meanwhile, cut to Viridian City, where the adults gather around Yellow saying, "Where were you? I told you to stay out of the forest. Weird things have been happening in there." Hey, is Yellow... There was a kind of, a dude who blocks your path and doesn't allow you to go past until you've at least caught like one Pokemon or something else. There was a girl and her father or granddad, I remember back in the early games, and she would constantly be telling him that he was tired or hungover or drunk or something. Is she supposed to be that girl? I wonder. But the person says, "I told you to stay out of the forest. Weird things have been happening in there. Do you know how worried we?" Red then questions, "What do you mean, weird thing?" The man says, "Dozens of Pokemon have been appearing all of a sudden, including types we've never seen before." Well, types not normally native. It's because Red's level has increased. The whole level of the surrounding area has grown all of a sudden. Red checks his Pokédex thinking, what's going on in the Viridian Forest? Yellow peeks in at the Pokédex saying, "What's that?" Red explains, "A Pokédex. I'm on a quest to fill this Pokédex with information about Pokemon. It's a gift from Professor Oak." The townspeople say, "You mean the Professor Oak? The famous Pokemon expert of Pallet Town?" Red says, "Yep, my name's Red. I'm from Pallet Town too. I'm on my way to the Indigo Plateau. I'm looking for other trainers to battle along the way so I can become the ultimate Pokemon master." Townsperson says, "Oh, well, I'm sorry to say this town doesn't have anyone who could give you a decent map." Red questions, "Huh? Why not?" Yellow says, "The gym's been closed for a long time, and the gym leader disappeared. No one even knows who he really was. They say he was invincible, that no one could defeat him, but now he is gone." Red says, "Invincible, huh? Which way is this gym?" The townsperson says, "Across the river, but..." River grabs his Pokeball saying, "Across the river, got it," and brings out his Gyarados. The townspeople shrink back saying, "Yeah, it's huge." Red turns to them saying, "Whoa, it's okay. Don't be scared." And then kneels down to Yellow saying, "Listen to me, please. Pokemon can be scary, but they're basically kind, loving creatures. If their owners are bad and train their Pokemon to do bad things, then they'll grow up to be bad too. But if you raise them with kindness and gentleness, then they'll always be your friends. You get what I'm saying?" That's before the friendship stat, which will make sure your Pokemon is heart and healthy, even in a desperate battle, became such an important thing. Yellow smiles, hugging her Rattata, saying, "I do." Red gives her a wink, saying, "Good. As long as you remember that, you'll be on the right side." He then tells Gyarados, "Okay, then let's go." The townspeople say, "Wait, the bridge is way over." But Red leaps in with Gyarados. Or it's more that he kind of makes Gyarados a bridge. And as Red gets to the other side, he tells Gyarados, "Thanks, return," and brings Gyarados back into his Pokeball. He waves to the townspeople saying, "See you later." And the townspeople gasp saying, "Amazing." Cut to the Viridian City gym. As Red steps up to the closed and dilapidated building, he says, "Okay, this is the place. Here, Venusaur's vine is perfect for scoping out a place like this." He brings out Venusaur, saying, "First, let's take a look around the outside." Venusaur. I'm not really sure what he's having Venusaur do, though. Just feeling around? Red says, "This is the place where Professor Oak and I looked for you. Looks like it's been closed ever since." "All right, I almost forgot about that. The invincible missing gym leader. I've got to find out what's going on here." Red looks around saying, "But there aren't any clues to anything. Guess we'd better go and Oh, hey, wait!" As Venusaur forces its way in through the doors, Red peeks in, saying, "Whoa, it's pitch dark." But suddenly, he senses something behind him as Venusaur moves next to Red and he whirls saying someone's there. He notices a dilapidated bust of the gym leader with the nameplate pretty much broken off. He looks at the bust and reads, Viridian Gym Leader. Can't read the name, it's broken off. But I have a feeling I've seen this face somewhere before. But where? Venusaur then grabs Red with the vine. As Red says, Venusaur, what is it? And a massive blinding light suddenly comes on as a figure walks forward saying, You came as I expected you would. Welcome to the Viridian City Gym. Red shields his eyes from the light saying, Who are you? The figure says, I waited a long time for you, Red of Pallet Town. A shocked Red questions, How does he know my name? And the figure smiles and walks towards Red as he thinks, What is it with this guy? The figure says, Look at you. You must be a fairly experienced trainer by now. An expert even? You've been on this mission to complete Oak's Pokédex for some time now. You must have defeated quite a few gym leaders in the process. Red calls out, Who are you? The man says, Was your last victory the time you went fossil hunting in Diglett's cave? No, it was when the Sylph Company headquarters was crumbling. Red is shocked as he remembers Giovanni and all that time ago. As Red says, It can't be. The fossil guy? Giovanni laughs saying, That's right. When I met you in Pewter City, I was the Viridian Gym Leader. And Red also remembers seeing Giovanni in the crumbling Sylph building. In chapter 37, Golly Golem! Giovanni smiles at him saying, From now on you can call me Giovanni. You've clashed with Team Rocket many times. Now you have the honor of meeting its leader. Leader of what was left of it. Red backs up, ready to grab his Pokeball saying, So that time before, you were testing me? Giovanni sneers saying, Something like that. Red thinks to himself, Okay, gotta stay calm. My opponent is the leader of the most evil Pokemon organization in the world. Can't let my guard down for a second. Are we the only two in the gym? Nah, it can't be. He's gotta have his underlings somewhere around here. So do I strike first, or is that suicide? Giovanni tells him, I see you are wondering how many of your enemies are in the building. You're trying to assess how powerful I am, and you're debating whether it would be wise to strike first. Read the kid like a book. Don't worry, there's no one here but you and me. I have no reason to lie. Not only that, he takes off his jacket, dropping several Pokeballs to the ground. He then reapplies it, much to Red's shock. Giovanni turns away, saying, I'm even unarmed. You have me at quite a disadvantage, eh? Now, come at me with all you've got. Red, feeling patronized, says, You wouldn't be making fun of me, would you? He brings out Poliwrath and has Poliwrath strike out at Giovanni. But suddenly, something appears around Giovanni, knocking Poliwrath back. Much to Red's shock, he turns and finds Poliwrath completely frozen solid. Much to his dismay, Red questions, What just happened? As suddenly, in a second, Cloyster is already upon him, right behind him. Giovanni tells him, It took 1 second for you to grab your Pokeball. By the time you threw it, another second passed. 3 seconds elapsed by the time Poliwrath left the ball and began to attack. More than enough time to reach the Pokeballs on the floor and launch a counterattack. For me, at least. Which, Jesus, dude! Them reflexes. Most people seem to think that the mark of a good trainer is simply their command of Pokemon. But the trainer's own power, skill, and speed are just as essential. It's a shame, Red. It really is. Red says, You dissing me? God, that slang. Giovanni still has the look of looking down on Red with a sneer, saying, Don't misunderstand. Red goes over to Poliwrath, but questions Giovanni's comment. Giovanni tells him, There was nothing shameful about your attack. The shame is that you're not on my side. I could use a trainer with your stubbornness, your explosive energy, your empathy for Pokemon. I've heard about your battles with my captain. At first I thought nothing of them, but then I kept hearing about the same young man scoring victory after victory. Red, in a very Star Wars-like moment, says, You think I'd join you? Giovanni whirls around saying, No, actually. I don't. Your independence and honor are among the traits I admire in you. So how about a bet? As you can see, my Pokemon are on the floor and far from me. It would take 6 seconds for me to seize one and attack. On the other hand, you have 5 Pokemon still at your side. If you can win under these conditions, I won't pressure you. I'll accept your decision. However, if I win, I love the little figure of Red just kneeling next to Giovanni in a rocket outfit. However, if I win, you will spend the rest of your life battling for me at my side. Well, does your silence signify assent, or are you just afraid? Much to Giovanni's shock, Red leans down and picks up one of Giovanni's Pokeballs, saying, "Afraid? I don't think so. I accept your challenge, but only if it's a fair fight." Giovanni sneers, saying, "Ha ha 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 ha. That's what I look for in a lieutenant." Oh, Red put his own Pokeballs down on the ground. Oh, snap. What a thing to do. Giovanni says, "A fair fight means my best against your best. Let's go." And the two move into their Pokemon, bringing them out. Red is the first, bringing out Snorlax and commanding it to use Mega Punch. As Red shouts, "I beat you, Giovanni," only for Snorlax to hit something. But Giovanni smiles, saying, "You're fast all right, Red." But a great trainer knows when to let his opponent strike first, so as to use his speed against him. As Snorlax is snuggly knocked back by Nidoqueen, with Red shouting, "What the?" Nidoqueen then tosses Snorlax through the wall of the building, with Red shouting, "No!" Giovanni then says, "I beat you with my speed before, now I'll beat you with your own. Pay attention, learn something." As he brings out Golem, which lunges at Red. Red dodges out of the way as Golem continues to bound off the walls, floor, and ceiling of the gym. Red narrowly managing to avoid time and time again. Giovanni laughs. "What's your next move, Red?" Red looks to Poliwrath, that's still down, as he says, "Shoot, don't panic, think." Golem's like some kind of projectile ball. Golem's bouncing like a pinball, trying to hone in on the spot where my next Pokemon's gonna appear. Okay then. Red looks to his Pokeballs and thinks, what if I don't take out another Pokemon? Giovanni then commands Golem to attack, once again narrowly avoiding Red. But then it's heading towards the hole in the wall, as Red says, if I just let it keep bouncing, Golem's bound to get sick of searching and head for the hole in the wall. And the second it does, he shouts out for Snorlax, and Snorlax gets right on up, and Red commands it to use Headbutt. Snorlax does just that, which causes Golem's head to crack a little bit. Red shouting, "How's that for a hard head?" But Giovanni smiles at Red, saying, "How sad, Golem's crumbling. Too bad. Its best attack involves shattering." As Golem breaks apart above Snorlax, Red calls out for Snorlax, saying, "Look out for the rock throw, no!" As Snorlax is pelted by Golem's rocks, Giovanni then says, "And now, explosion!" And Golem's bits detonate all around Snorlax, downing the Pokemon as Red calls out for it. But suddenly, Beedrill's stinger is right at Red's throat. As Giovanni says, "Too late, Red, it's over. One move and Beedrill drills you." The moment you picked Snorlax, I chose Explosion for my final attack. But Explosion can't be used indoors, which is why I let the fight move outside. I told you you'd learn from me. As Red puts his hands up, with Beedrill backing him against the wall, Giovanni says, "Now, don't you think it's about time to give up?" Red, backed against the wall, uses his shoe to lift up the Pokeball against the wall. As Giovanni says, "Well, Red?" Red doesn't respond, as suddenly Aerodactyl's wings appear behind him, with Red saying, "It's time for you to give up." Giovanni reels back, saying, "You had a Pokeball under your foot?" As Red calls out for Aerodactyl to lift him up into the air, he commands Aerodactyl, in Chapter 38, "Long live the Nidoqueen!" Red calls out, "The battle's not over yet. Hyper Beam!" And Aerodactyl does just that, unleashing Hyper Beam upon Beedrill, knocking it out there and then. Red questions, "Did we do it?" But as Red gets closer back to the ground, he notices, they're gone. No way. That hole. He notices a hole in the ground. But suddenly, the roof starts to give in. It says, "Earthquake, the gym's gonna collapse." "No, Polly, He runs over to Poliwrath, managing to get to it just as a rock falls, but it ends up hitting Red in the back. The gym collapses in, but Red has managed to get Poliwrath out the gym, now destroyed. As Jim winces from the pain on his back, he gets alerted to a presence as a Nidoking comes stomping up to him. He says, "That's what caused this earthquake." With Giovanni saying, "I'm impressed, Red. So far I've been using Pokemon outside of my specialty, like Cloyster and Beedrill, but you're actually forcing me to use my best fighters." As Giovanni is flanked by Nidoking, Nidoqueen, Rhydon, Rhyhorn, and Dugtrio, looking absolutely feared. Red backs up, saying, "Aerodactyl," and Aerodactyl comes to Red's defense, but Giovanni says, "Rhyhorn, Tail Whip," and Rhyhorn does just that, knocking Aerodactyl back and seemingly out. As Red calls out, "No!" Giovanni tells him, "So much for your overhead escape. Now it's time to trap the trainer, Rhydon, Fissure." And a massive fissure opens up underneath Red, with him just barely managing to not fall in, grabbing onto the edge. Giovanni peers in above Red, saying, "Destroy the opponent's footing. A good trick to remember." Red stares up at Giovanni, as Giovanni sneers down at him, saying, "You've fought against quite a few gym leaders, each with their own specialty. The electric Lieutenant Surge, the poisonous Koga, the psychic Sabrina, and now me, the master of ground Pokemon, Dugtrio, Rhydon, Rhyhorn, Nidoqueen, Nidoking, the gems of the Viridian City Gym. You know of my prowess, don't you?" And he strikes a full-on JoJo pose, just Red, still clinging on for dear life, says, "Giovanni, the missing gym leader, said to be the greatest of them all." Red thinks, "And me without my Pokeballs, all lost in the rubble." As Giovanni and his strongest Pokemon peer at Red, Red then notices two of his Pokeballs not completely buried in the rubble. He then calls out, "It's crumbling, go!" And he races for the Pokeballs, only for them to be knocked out of the way by none other than Dugtrio. The Pokeballs are damaged by this, Pokeballs containing Venusaur as well as Gyarados. Giovanni tells him, "My attack shattered the opening mechanism of your Pokeballs. Your Pokemon cannot be released." Red falls to his knees in despair, as Giovanni tells him, "You fought well, Red. You traveled throughout this land and survived challenges that no one imagined you could, but you never realized that every place you visited and fought was already under my control." Red glares at him as Giovanni continues to monologue, saying, "To you they seem to be unconnected incidents, but all of your battles were pieces of one great plan. All of the Pokemon we collected for experimental purposes were brought to Celadon City Labs for biomodification, then put through battle training in the neighboring town of Saffron City. Next, they were taken to Viridian City via Cinnabar Island, then on to Vermilion City to be put aboard the SS Anne." I feel like you have that mixed up, but whatever. Transfer had to be accomplished by sea because the northern highways were being watched by the good gym leaders of those cities. Yeah, I'm just kind of realizing that, the territory is kind of divided in terms of gym leaders. Giovanni tells them, and finally they were brought to the breeding ground where these experimental animals regained their primal savage powers. Here in the vast depths of the Viridian Forest. After all, with the Viridian gym leader missing, no trainers ever came here looking for a battle, so I've had all the privacy I needed to develop an unstoppable army of Pokemon." Red thinks to himself, "I'm the only one who knows about his evil plan, and now I'm the only one who can stop him. I can't afford to lose." But suddenly, a Pokeball goes bouncing towards him, containing Pikachu. Red says, "Pikachu, good going. Let's do this." As Red gets to his feet, he says, "Giovanni, this isn't just a battle against a gym leader anymore. This is a battle to stop Team Rocket, and I'm gonna win." He brandishes his Pokeball, and he and Giovanni circle each other, as Giovanni laughs, saying, "Ha ha ha ha, you haven't changed a bit since the last time I saw you, Red. Let me tell you something. how this will end. Your last Pokemon is Pikachu. Its greatest weapon, Thunderbolt. It will take 1 second for the Pokeball to open and for Pikachu to emerge. 2 seconds to charge enough energy for the Thunderbolt, and then another 2 seconds for the attack to reach me. By the time those 5 seconds have elapsed, Nidoqueen will have pierced you with its poison sting. Nidoqueen, attack. And Nidoqueen does just that. Yellow launches his Pokeball containing Pikachu, saying, "Got all the answers, do you?" And as the counter starts to time down, Pikachu emerges, and much to the shock of Nidoqueen, it's still not doing exactly what Giovanni said. Well, it's not going how Giovanni said. As Giovanni says, "No, that's impossible." Pikachu manages to charge up faster than Giovanni had predicted, at least 1 second faster, as Pikachu unleashes a massive thunderbolt at the command of Red, which, by all means, should not affect any of these Pokemon as they have the type advantage, but whatever, it happens plenty of times in the anime. As Nidoqueen is downed, Red, holding his arm, says Pikachu doesn't have time to charge up after I open the Pokeball, then I'll just have to charge up inside the Pokeball. Which is definitely not how that usually works, but I mean, look, we can see the Pokemon inside the Pokeballs anyway, so why shouldn't that be the way things go? Preemptively charging attacks, God, if that was a possibility. Whew. Giovanni, burnt to a crisp, says, no one can hold a Pokeball laced with thousands of volts of electricity. Oh, as Red pulls on the glove he got from a Lieutenant Surge, Giovanni says, that glove, it's Team Rocket's. Giovanni hits the ground saying, can't believe it, that my downfall was one of my own weapons. I mean, they're insulated gloves, dude. I wouldn't really call it a weapon. But as Red gazes over the defeated Giovanni, it says, nope, your downfall was the suffering of the Pokemon you tried to corrupt for your evil purposes, Red says as he pats Pikachu on the head. And then he collapses, much to Pikachu's shock. Red then starts to wake up saying, huh? Where am I? He's greeted by Yellow holding Pikachu saying, you're alive. You fainted at the edge of the forest. I was afraid. Red gets up from the bed he was in, saying, the forest? What about all the Pokemon? The ones that were acting strange? Yellow explains, saying, teehee, we finally got up the nerve to do something. Everyone going into the forest now to calm the Pokemon that were acting up. As we see the townspeople calming the Golem and wheezing, Red gets up from the bed saying, all right, but something tells me they'll need my help. He puts back on his clothes as Yellow says, Red questions, what? Yellow says, our gym, they say it got destroyed in some huge battle. Red tries to explain, saying, well, see, Yellow mentions, nobody around here is very good with Pokemon, so we were thinking that it might be nice to have someone around to, teach us. Red questions, you mean me? Yellow nods, saying, Red says, it would be an honor. After I've achieved enough to be a true gym leader, when I come back, I'll be the best gym leader ever. Wait for me. We know that's not how that goes. We know who actually becomes the gym leader of the Viridian City Gym. Red takes off as Yellow waves to him. We then cut out of a building where several people and Pokemon have gathered. An announcer saying, single line, please, form a single line. The chairman of the Pokemon fan club says, excuse me, as he tries to butt in, but the people knock him away saying, hey, old man, no cutting. The chairman says, is that how you treat your elders? Hey, ooh, now isn't this something? As he spots a sparrow and grabs it saying, where's the owner of this Pokemon? The Pokemon Lovers Club will declare you an honorary member on the spot. Person says, please give that back, it's mine. And grabs it, taking off. Why are they hidden? The person goes up to the reception desk saying, one to enter. Person at the desk says, yes, sir. And they notice registration cards for the league, reading red, blue, and green. And the person says, excellent, all three are here. Cut to the inside of the Pokemon League. So, even here, it's this big to-do with a huge crowd, whereas in the actual game, ain't nobody around. As the crowd cheers in chapter 39, just a sparrow carrier. That's Kabutops, right? Yeah. Kabutops is battling against Poliwrath, and Poliwrath uses double team to escape Kabutops using Slash. Trainer says, gotcha, as Poliwrath knocks out Kabutops, and Poliwrath poses with Red as he says, all right, I'm in the semifinals. A figure calls out behind Red, you ever seen a battle that intense before? Red turns, seeing none other than Blue with his Pidgeot. Blue calls out with a sneer, "Hey," and Red brandishes his Pokeball saying, "You." Announcement comes out saying winner of the D group, Blue. Blue then gets off of the platform that he's on down to Red's level. As Blue says, "I don't suppose I need to tell you, Red, that in the history of the Pokemon League, every single winner of the championship has been a trainer from Pallet Town. You know, they keep building Pallet Town up more and more." Red says, "Yeah?" As Blue recalls his Pidgeot. Pidgeot, right? Yeah, Pidgeot. He says, "The question this year is which one will it be?" Red says, "You or me?" "Yeah, you or me." Blue smiles back at him and walks off saying, "I'm looking forward to battling you in the final round." Announcer goes, "Group winners, please proceed to the arena." Red says, "Okay, let's go." That is until he notices none other than Green with a Nidoran. Yeah, they're both Nidoran. A female Nidoran. She lets go. That goes over to a male Nidoran and gives it a smooch. Green says, "Oh my, there you are, my little Nido. Ooh, look who found a boyfriend." As we see a man noticing his Nidoran snuggling up with the other. Green says, "Our Pokemon like each other, so we should too. How about a Pokemon trade to seal the deal, Like my Weedle for your big, strong Butterfree?" The trainer says, "What?" Enter Red behind her saying, "You still up to your tricks, I see." Green shrieks and turns saying, "Hi Red, what's up?" with a fake smile. Red says, "What do you mean, what's up? What are you doing in?" But Green gestures over to the board, which reads, Group A, first place, Green. Much to Red's shock, Green says, "Tee, weren't those preliminaries a breeze?" Red says, "You're gonna be in the semifinals?" Green says, "Well, see you in the arena. I don't plan on losing because I'm a trainer from Pallet Town too. You know." Red says, "What? Hey, get back here. What did you say?" But suddenly Bill comes up behind Red saying, "Congratulations on the prelims there, fella. The final four. Ooh, you see the matchups yet?" Red says, "Bill." As we see the readout, Red says, "You mean it's me and Blue in the first round?" And we don't see who Green is facing off with. We then cut to the final stage arena, where Red is sulking and sighing with his head in his hands. Blue says, "Ah, heck, Red. I know you was figuring on coming up against that rival of yours in the finals, but real life don't follow a script." As Green enters the arena, Bill then says, hey, this B winner, Dr. O. Scary looking fella, ain't he?" As we see Professor Oak again. Man, this is before Kakui in the finals for in Sun and Moon, huh? The professor donning a mask so he can fight against the main character. Man, you gotta love when a series lasts so long that the spin-off manga does a lot of the stuff that the anime would do later down the line. Red says, "And weird." Obviously not noticing Professor Oak. I'm sorry, I don't know who this Professor Oak is. This is obviously Dr. O. The announcer says, "Let the match begin." Green sends out Jigglypuff, while Dr. O sends out Spearow. The audience says, "Hey, that girl, she's bringing out a Jigglypuff in the match like this." Red thinks she wouldn't lead with such a cute Pokemon unless it's part of her strategy, probably to get her opponent to let down his guard. What's with that guy Spearow? Yeah, what about it, Spearow? Green seems to be worrying about something, and then says, "A silly old Spearow in the Pokemon League semifinals? You think I'm some kind of pushover just because I'm a cute little girl?" Professor O doesn't respond, as Green commands Jigglypuff saying, "Well, let's find out, shall we? Attack!" And Jigglypuff uses, Tri-Beam? I think it's Tri-Beam, which managed to knock down the Spearow. Green says, "Tee, I won all my prelims with a single shot." But Dr. O grins as Spearow whooshes in, and Dr. O commands his Spearow to use Fury Attack, as Green and Jigglypuff guard themselves from the fury of attacks. Green says, "Hey, no fair. Jigglypuff, sing!" And Jigglypuff does just that, which starts to affect the Spearow as well as the crowd. Well, all except for Blue, who's undeterred. Red says, "Ugh, so sleepy. Who's not playing fair?" But the Spearow manages to fend off the sing attack, oddly enough. Blue notes the song isn't reaching the Spearow. Jigglypuff doesn't have the speed to fight flying type Pokemon. And is that really the case? Oh well. Green says, ooh, you take that and that. And Jigglypuff continues to unleash Tri-Beam after Tri-Beam that Spearow just dodges around. Red calls out, idiot, what are you doing? Switch to an aerial battle. Come on, hurry. As Green and Jigglypuff are backed into a corner, Green tells Red, I can't. Red questions, what? Green calls back, I can't. I don't have any flying type Pokemon, okay? Which is like, how do you not have any flying type Pokemon? And then again, we always just see her float by on Jigglypuff to make do, so didn't really even think about that. Red says, what? Dr. O brings out the Pidgeot and what is it called again? Dodrio. There we go. I was about to call it a Dugtrio, and I'm like, wait, nope, that's not right. As Dr. O says, I think you may be the one who underestimated your opponent, little girl. Red says, they're all flying type Pokemon. He must know Green's weakness. Green backs away, not noticing Dr. O, but coming up behind her, which, Dr. O, we're gonna have to put you on a list, as he whispers in Green's ear saying, let this be a lesson to you. Stealing is wrong. Much to the shock of Green, who turns thinking, who is this guy? Dr. O smiles at her, but Green then tells Jigglypuff an opening, disable, and uses it on Dr. O specifically. She then takes out another Pokeball saying, well, if an aerial battle is my only choice, Blastoise now. She brings out Blastoise, who is doing something. The audience goes, huh? As, what the hell? Okay, only in a manga. Blastoise is commanded to use Hydro Pump as it grabs onto Green and operates as a water-powered jetpack. Green calls out, just because I don't have any flying type Pokemon doesn't mean I can't get into the air. It may not be what you define as aerial, but it works for me, as Blastoise uses its Hydro Pump against the Spearow, as well as Dr. O. Green says, oh, and while we're at it, let's see what you look like, shall we? Dr. O's mask is blasted off. Well, it starts to be blasted off. As the announcer says, an aerial Hydro Pump? You saw it here first. Green says, the mask is slipping off his face, but Dr. O smiles, as he says, you know how a parrot bounces your words back at you? Green questions this, as Dr. O says, well, my Spearow can't do that with words, but mirror move. Bill says, it's reflect and Sparrow's making an energy reflector field. The reflect bounces the Hydro Pump back at both Green and Blastoise, and Red looks up at the scoreboard that shows the HP, which was a nice thing that they also did in, what was it, Pokemon Origins? Red looks at it saying, its health levels. As Blastoise HP is low. Both Blastoise and Green hit the ground. Spearow moves in as Green starts to freak out saying, no, don't come near me. And she starts to freak out. The audience questions, what's wrong with her? Dr. O approaches her saying, what's wrong, Green? Phobia flying type Pokemon. 6 years ago, a little girl of 5 was abducted by a large legendary bird Pokemon, which, Ho-Oh? Oh god, Ho-Oh appearing here too, geez. At the time, I had a grandson of the same age, so I felt compelled to get involved. I was deeply involved with the investigation. I could never forget her fate. Imagine my surprise when my security cameras caught the very same girl stealing my Squirtle. He holds up a picture of Green stealing the Squirtle. Red says, hey, this Dr. O guy. Bill says, that's Professor Oak, as Dr. O's mask falls off. Oak smiles, saying, it's no surprise that a trauma like that would leave you terribly afraid of birds, Green. Green tells him, get away. Blastoise, water gun. But as Blastoise unleashes the water, Oak uses Mirror Move again, blasting Blastoise and knocking both it and Green down, and Blastoise out, much to the shock of Green. As the announcer says, the winner, Dr. O. Oak raises his mighty beefy hand. Who knew that Oak was so ripped? Green slumps to her knees saying, I lost. Oak stands over her saying, now, young lady, you owe me an explanation. You didn't have to steal Pokemon. Why did you do it? Red thinks so the squirrel thief was you. Dude, I thought you realized that when you were told about it. Green says, it wasn't fair. I grew up in a place I didn't know with no family. All I remembered was that I came from somewhere called Pallet Town. Then one day I found out that 2 boys my age from Pallet Town got a Pokemon and a Pokédex from Professor Oak and started their training journeys. But I was from Palatown too. I wanted to do what they were doing. I wanted to get a Pokemon from you and a Pokédex to take on my training journeys. The audience, sympathetic to her plight, have hushed in silence, while Oak reaches his hand out to hers, saying, Green, do you remember what I just said? Stealing is wrong. Promise me that you understand that now. As he gives her a Pokédex. Much to her shock, he says, Here, the third Pokédex. Now you too are a trainer from Palatown. As Green wells up with tears, she says, She breaks down. As Oak pats her on the head, saying, There, I'm just glad you're all right. Bill is in tears too, saying, I get it. Heck, I can relate to being snatched by a legendary bird. Like, dude, Pharaoh is not a legendary bird, buddy. That's cute. And also kind of ties into the fact that Green didn't really get to appear in the games. I think she was either supposed to, or she was just put on promotion and stuff, and then inserted later. But she became pretty prominent later down the line in, like, Let's Go Eevee and Pikachu, and even in the Pokemon Master games of Fire Red and Leaf Green. Although, there's a bit of contention whether or not Green and Leaf are the same character, kind of like with Lyra and Chris in the Gold and Silver games, but I feel like it's a little bit more obvious when it comes to Leaf and Green that they're probably the same person. Cut to the player locker room, where Oak is fanning himself, saying, Ew, what a workout. Haven't sweated like that in a while. Blue is there too, checking his Pokédex, saying, Grandfather, if you're the winner of the first match, that means that whoever wins the match between Red and me has to fight you. Oak says, No, I've already won myself a championship. I don't need this, as he has a flashback to him facing off against Agatha, which is an actual thing. I actually love that bit of continuity. Oak says, I'm bowing out. You two are on your own in the final, which kind of sucks because Green got beaten and now her opponent is dropping out. So it's kind of like a punishment for stealing the Pokemon. It's just like, I snatch away your victory. Although, considering she didn't have any flying Pokemon, I don't know how far she was gonna get. Actually, what Pokemon did Green have besides Jigglypuff? She had Clefable, Diglett, Horsey, Blastoise. Yeah, but no flying Pokemon, huh? She really does need at least one flying Pokemon. Announcement comes over the arena saying, Your attention, please. We have just been informed that the winner of the first semifinals match, Dr. O, has withdrawn from the competition. Since tournament rules prohibit the loser of a semifinals from counting, the scheduled second semifinal is now the final match, much to Red's joy. Alright, well, you made it further than Ash did. I guess, I know there's no correlation, but I like to believe that the figures that ended up winning the league or getting like the various different runner-up prizes that Ash kind of ended up walking out on were actually red, blue, and green. Although that really wouldn't add up unless you want to count Blue and Gary as two different people, which you could. The whole Pokemon Masters EX thing kind of makes things very odd when you factor in Ash being there, which is all well and dandy, but then it's like, what does Ash say when he meets Blue in that game? I'd have to check into that. Regardless, we pick up with the crowd cheering and the announcer going, Contestants will enter the arena to determine the champion of the Indigo Plateau Pokemon League. It's Red versus Blue, and Chapter 40, a Charizard and a champion. The two enter into the arena, brandishing their Pokeballs. Bill thinks, they're choosing their Pokeballs. I can't stand the suspense. What are they gonna open with? The announcer goes, Final match, ready? And they, I don't know, tap Pokeballs? Which, weird. A hush falls over the crowd. The two toss their balls into the air. And Oak says, when the Pokeballs hit the ground. The announcer says fight. As the Pokeballs open up, Red and Blue dash into action. Bringing out Red brings out Venusaur. Blue brings out Charizard. Green calls out Grass versus Fire. Bill says, dang the luck, dang it. Blue sneers, saying, Grass, I take it you were betting I'd lead with a water-type Pokemon. Well, Red, when you bet, sometimes you lose. He tells Charizard to use Fire Spin, and Red and Venusaur dodge out of the way. Blue tells him, you won't slip out of this. I guess Charizard's using Fire Punch on Venusaur, but Venusaur then unleashes Poison Powder, which stuns Charizard. Much to Gary, I'm gonna call him Gary. Blue shock. Red says, careful Blue, don't get cocky. Now, while it's wobbly, Venusaur, Razor Leaf. This is such a massive disadvantage because Charizard is fire flying. So a lot of what Venusaur could do wouldn't even work on it. But Red has Charizard dodge out of the way. And Bill calls out, don't let your guard down, Red. Red says, no way, go. Snorlax, Mega Punch. And Snorlax comes in with the Mega Punch. But Blue says, oh no you don't. Oh, all those arms. I have to assume that it's Machamp, right? It's Machamp. I'm getting confused with Machoke. And several arms pop out of the dust, binding Snorlax's arms. Red tells him, legs are free, Mega Kick. But the foot is caught as Red says, what the? 4 arms? Blue smiles as Machoke is holding Snorlax in place. Bill says, I can't take much more of this as Oak laughs. Blue says, let's skip the cheap trick, shall we? See if you can take me head on. And Red smiles. Machamp and Snorlax struggle against each other as the announcer says, has this championship ever seen a wrestling match like this? Bill calls out, oh no, this is supposed to be Snorlax's greatest strength, and it's getting beat. Blue chuckles to himself. As Snorlax is lifted off the ground, the audience says, it's lifting that huge. Machamp lifts Snorlax up into the air, much to Snorlax's bewilderment. Red calls out for Snorlax, but Blue says, no use struggling. Machamp's 4 arms can block its opponent's punches and kicks simultaneously. Now, add a little rotation. Green goes, whoa, as Blue says, and you're helpless. As Machamp spins Snorlax in the air, Bill says, a foolproof plan, amazing power. Has Red got a chance in heck? Blue then tells Machoke to use Slam, and Machoke slams Snorlax into the ground, which causes the arena to start to break. And as Machamp flexes, Red says, it broke the arena floor. Blue tells him, if I recall correctly, Red, Machamp evolved under your care. I'm glad to have this opportunity to show my appreciation. Rub it in, why don't you? Well, I suppose it's time for the final blow. Bill thinks, don't let it end, Red. Come on now. But Red's still smiling. And Blue says, heh, I know that look of his. That boy's thought of something. What the heck? Suddenly, Snorlax's body stiffens. And Bill thinks, yeah, he's got Snorlax using Harden and playing possum for that dumb old Blue. Blue commands Machamp to attack using Karate Chop. The crowd says his final move, but Red thinks, that's it, smarty pants. Bill says, attaboy, Blue ain't caught on yet. When that fist hits your rock hard Snorlax, there's gonna be one less arm to worry about. Jeez. But as Snorlax tenses up, Blue says, now Red, do you honestly think I didn't anticipate you using such an obvious trick? Machoke slams into the bit of debris that Snorlax is on, launching it up, much to Bill, Green, and Professor Oak's surprise. Snorlax is sent flying up into the air. Red saying no. Bill saying Blue read him like a book. He weren't aiming at Snorlax, he was aiming at the floor. Blue says, as the Greek said, give me a long enough lever. And Green finishes saying, and I can move the earth. Realizing, pulley systems, levers and how that works. Professor Oak says, my grandson is growing up. When he started out, he was too arrogant, too impressed with his own ideas. He couldn't let go of his preconceived strategy. He's learned to adapt to surprises. Despite himself, he's getting to be more like Red. Blue says, I'm not the same trainer you beat before, my friend. Wait, am I forgetting when Red last beat Blue? When did Red beat Blue? The announcer says, Red Snorlax has been flung out of the arena with a brilliant reversal by Blue. According to the rules, any Pokemon that touches the ground outside of the arena will be ineligible to. But then Bill says, huh? What's that noise? Up in the air, it's Snorlax coming down like a comet. Much to Blue's surprise, Red says, way to go, and Snorlax slams into Machamp using Double Edge. As the crowd runs from the destruction, they say, the Snorlax, it never touched down, it's hitting from the air. Red calls out, I guess you don't know how maneuverable a Snorlax can be, Blue. Maybe you should have done your homework. Oak says, so my grandson isn't the only one who's grown up. Red's learning how to keep his cool and how to shore up his instinctual approach with his knowledge, just like Blue. I actually like that. They've learned a lot from each other. Shoot, Ash and Gary weren't this far along at this point. Red says, great job, Snorlax. Plain old kicks and punches couldn't beat those forearms, but nobody was expecting an aerial attack from you. Blue looks down at his downed Machamp and says, there was a toxic attack in there. Your health levels dropped to a third. No need to look at my Pokedex to see what condition you're in. You gave it your best, now return to your Pokeball. And he recalls Machamp. Red thinks to himself, is this the same guy who didn't even notice when a baby Kangaskhan was sick? Hey? He's evolved just like you. Blue then brings out Ninetales, saying, now it's time to finish this. Red says, Ninetales, the one we fought over before. Alright, let's see what Snorlax can do against... Oops, cancel that. Snorlax stops his attack. He says, you've been through enough, poor guy. You're not at full power anymore, are you? Somebody told me once that you've got to know your limit. Blue says, and someone told me there's no satisfaction in beating a weak opponent. Pick your next Pokemon, Red. Man, days. Such maturity, Jeebus. Oak notes, ho, these boys have learned more than battle strategy from each other. Blue then commands Ninetales to strike, as Oak says, they've incorporated the best traits of the other into themselves. They know each other like the backs of their own hand. The announcer says this match is as tight as they come. One move could tip the balance. Red looks at his Pokédex thinking, could be my last chance. And Blue does the same, saying the time is now. Bill thinks, one elegant move could win this thing, and one dumb little mistake could blow it. Blue's going with Ninetales. What do you answer with, Red? Red brings out his Pokeball. Oh, as we see the Elite Four watching from the stand. Lorelei says, who do you like best, Bruno? And Bruno doesn't respond. Is it Lorelei or Loralee? I actually don't remember how you pronounce this. Oh, dang. Oh well, sorry if I'm getting it wrong. As Bruno doesn't respond, she says, I say, the sullen one. Agatha chuckles as Lance says, look, the cheerful one's about to make his choice. As Red steadies himself, Blue says, what's he waiting for? He then commands Ninetales, and it ignites the tips of its tails. Blue says, he knows I'm going with a flame attack. He's got 4 Pokemon left. He's bound to go with a big one, probably Gyarados or Aerodactyl. Well, if you won't attack, I will. And Blue commands Ninetales to attack. And so Red brings out Poliwrath, commanding it to attack as it bounds through the flames. Blue says, that little thing. Does he think a small target is the safer choice? Well, with this attack, size isn't the issue. Fire Blast. This not only prevents the trainer himself from moving, as flames surround both Poliwrath and Red. Blue says, but flings his Pokemon up in the blast of heat. Red calls out for Poliwrath as it's sent careening into the lights above. The announcer says the blast sends Poliwrath's water spraying wildly, and the Poliwrath slams into the ceiling as Red tries to withstand the heat, which I don't know how he's not being burnt alive, but whatever. Blue says, another physics lesson, Red. Heat rises, which shuts down any aerial attack. Red then brings out Pikachu, but Pikachu is also sent upward, as Blue says, it'll be the same, Red, no matter what you try. Both Poliwrath and Pikachu hit the ground hard, as Red calls out for Pika and Poly. Blue says, good job, Ninetales, return. And now, to keep the flame attack going, Charizard. The announcer says, Blue follows fire with fire. He's gone back to his original Pokemon. Blue says, what now, Red? Red says, okay. If you're going back to Charizard, and the announcer says, Venusaur, again? Green says, you've got to be kidding. But Oak ponders this. The crowd murmur amongst themselves as the announcer says, it's as if Red is mocking Blue's second use of Charizard, but his first use of Venusaur was a disaster. What is he thinking? That's a good question. Bill says, he's surrounded by fire, and what's the dummy do? He throws grass at it. And this time the dang fool did it on purpose. But Blue says, I get it, Red. You want to use both to finish the match with the Pokemon my grandfather originally gave us. That is so very, very you. Choosing sentiment over victory. Charizard. And he commands Charizard to attack, while Red commands Venusaur to attack, and a vine slips around Charizard. Blue says, "You actually believe you can tie up a Charizard? You know that won't." But Blue looks up and says, "Hey, what's that rain cloud doing inside?" Green says, "That's not any ordinary rain cloud." Well, she thinks it. Red says, "That, Blue, is a thunder cloud. You didn't think I was dumb enough to use a vine against Charizard, did you?" The superheated water droplets from Poliwrath condense into a cloud that's been charged with lightning by Pikachu's electric energy. And when that energy builds up enough to strike, man, this is the same kind of BS you see in the anime. It's just like, I did this in order to set up this. It's the same as when Yu-Gi-Oh! Using Catapult Turtle to take down the flotation ring of the floating castle onto all of the monsters on his opponent's side. And it's just like, that's not how that works. Red says, "It'll strike that vine as a thunder. While lightning comes from the thundercloud, striking the tied-up Charizard." Blue says, "It's a lightning rod. Charizard, blast it away." Red says, "These three Pokemon and I have been through a lot together. We know each other, but you don't really understand friendship," which, dang. And Charizard is cooked. Bill says, "The fog's lifting." Green says, that's Charizard. And the winner is Blue. But suddenly both Blue and Charizard fall to the ground as the crowd gasps. The announcer says, "No, the champion of the Pokemon League is Red." As Red stands with his Venusaur, Poliwrath, and Pikachu. Red turns to his Pokemon saying, "We did it. After everything we've been through together, we did it. Together." And he passes out. Which, man, these Pokemon battles are intense. No wonder in the anime they usually have the trainer stand quite a way back from the arena. And as the crowd cheers Red's name, the announcer says, "Please remain seated for the award ceremony." Cut to Green on the phone saying, "Hello, this is Green. You know, the trainer who snagged third place in the Indigo Plateau Pokemon League. Teehee. Now about that endorsement deal." Bill comes in saying, "Huh? Hey, where do you get off calling yourself?" Green says, "Silly boy, Professor Oak withdrew, so I'm in the record books with the third best score, aren't I?" Bill looks to Oak saying, "He's got us there." Green then calls out, "Come on, they can't start without you guys. Hurry up." Red says, "We hear you." While Blue says, "He's so obnoxious." A bandage up Blue and Red, who really advocate for how dangerous this really is, look at each other and smile. And outside of the whole event, Mew is flying about, looking down on everything. Red then says, "Now, let's go home to Pallet Town." Okay, and that's the end of the arc for Red, Blue, and Green. And this original image, yeah, this is the promotional image they had for the game. And this is one of the first things we see that told us about Green. I didn't even think of that being what inspired them to give each of them the Pokemon that they have. I'm kind of interested in what happens next because, yeah, that's the end of the game. You kind of did everything, but you didn't have the face-off with the Elite Four, which is weird because you kind of glimpsed them. So I guess that's the yellow part of things, huh? Are the Elite Four bad guys? Huh. Alright, Red has 7 badges, 71 Pokemon, won the Pokemon League Championship. Oh man, wow, his Pokemon are only that high in level? Yeah, I guess. Once you go past the 50s, that's about the cap off for a lot of things. His most powerful Pokemon is Poliwrath. Least powerful Pokemon is Aerodactyl, which is the newer one. He has a decently sized team, but that was fun. The face-off with Giovanni, the face-off with Blue, finally getting more into Green's background, which I'll be honest, I already knew most of. I just didn't remember till it actually said it in the actual manga. I know it's tied in with something else later down the line, and we'll talk about that when we get to it, if I remember. But that was really good, and to see the lessons that both Blue and Red learned from each other and how that contrasted, that was pretty good. Blue learned a lot more empathy. Red learned to fight a little bit more intelligently. You know, they've been through a lot. That was good, and I'm glad Oak got to really see it. I think it's much better than what you got in the game, where Oak kind of looked down on his grandson for how he was acting. I like the idea that Blue grew. He had grown probably the most out of both his game and anime counterpart, and had to really come to terms with just how things were. And he didn't have any regret about what had happened. I don't know, I just think that was really good. It was really solid, and I'm glad this keeps going because I just kind of really like where all of this headed. It was a fun little nostalgia trip, but considering everything that happens next is kind of manga exclusive, I don't know the ins and outs about the details about what goes on in the next story arc, so we'll just have to find out together. But let me know your thoughts on this section of volume 3 in the comments section below. Also remember to like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the ride. What was your favorite fight? What was the favorite Pokemon you saw in these series of chapters? Let me know down below. But until next time, like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed the ride. Thank you so much for watching. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din and hope to see you later. Take care. Bye-bye.